I am continuing my reading. What I'm doing in this series is to read through the entire standard works of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This consists of the Bible, the Book of Mormon, the Doctrine and Covenants, and the Pearl of Great Price. I am reading in a chronological order of events, not according to publication or volume, so I will be skipping around a bit as I move along. So we continue now with Ezekiel. This will be chapter 27. Now remember, this is according to chapter 26. This is the 11th year. And he spoke this in the first day of the month, but it doesn't say what month. Remember, the 11th year, that is the year that Jerusalem is destroyed, like the 4th month of the year, Jerusalem is destroyed. So this is probably just after the destruction. The word of the Lord came again unto me, saying, Now, thou son of man, take up a lamentation for Tyrus, and say unto Tyrus, O thou that art situate at the entry of the sea, which art a merchant of the people for many isles, thus saith the Lord God, O Tyrus, thou hast said, I am a perfect beauty. Thy borders are in the midst of the seas. Thy builders have perfected thy beauty. They have made all thy shipboards of fir trees of Senir. They have taken cedars from Lebanon to make masts for thee. Of the oaks of Bashan have they made thine oars. The company of the Asherites have made thy benches of ivory, brought out of the isles of Chittim. Fine linen with broidered work from Egypt was that which thou spreadest forth to be thy sail. Blue and purple from the isles of Elisha was that which covered thee. The inhabitants of Zidon and Arvad were thy mariners. Thy wise men, O Tyrus, that were in thee were thy pilots. The ancients of Gebal and all the wise men thereof were in thee thy caulkers. All the ships of the sea with their mariners were in thee to occupy thy merchandise. They of Persia and of Lud and of Phut were in thine army, thy men of war. They hanged the shield and helmet in thee. They set forth thy comeliness. The men of Arvad and thine army were upon thy walls round about, and the Gammadims were in thy towers. They hanged their shields upon thy walls round about. They have made thy beauty perfect. Tarshish was thy merchant by reason of the multitude of all kind of riches. With silver, iron, tin, and lead they traded in their fairs. Javan, Tubal, and Meshech, they were thy merchants. They traded the persons of men and vessels of brass in thy market. They of the house of Togarmah traded in thy fairs with horses and horsemen and mules. The men of Dedan were thy merchants. Many isles were the merchandise of thine hand. They brought thee for a present horns of ivory and ebony. Syria was thy merchant by reason of the multitude of the wares of thy making. They occupied in thy fairs with emeralds, purple, and broidered work, and fine linen, and coral, and agate. Judah and the land of Israel, they were thy merchants. They traded in thy market wheat of Minnith, and Panag, and honey, and oil, and balm. Damascus was thy merchant in the multitude of the wares of thy making, for the multitude of all riches, and the wine of Helbon, and the white wool. Dan also, and Javan, going to and fro, occupied in their fairs. Bright iron, cassia, and calamus were in thy market. Dedan was thy merchant in precious clothes for chariots. Arabia and all the princes of Kedar, they occupied with thee in lambs and rams and goats. In these were they thy merchants. The merchants of Sheba and Raamah, they were thy merchants. They occupied in thy fairs with chief of all spices, and with all precious stones and gold. Haran and Cana and Eden. The merchants of Sheba, Ashur, and Kilmad were thy merchants. These were thy merchants in all sorts of things, in blue cloths and broidered work, and in chests of rich apparel, bound with cords and made of cedar among thy merchandise. The ships of Tarshish did sing of thee in thy market, and thou wast replenished and made very glorious in the midst of the sea. Now there's a lot of names here. Now of course the caulkers, those are the repairers of leaks. Caulking is a plaster that is used to seal cracks and stuff. To occupy thy merchandise is to trade or exchange. And then we have this long list of locations and other nations that did trade with Tyre, or Tyrus. Tyrus was the center of trade, and note the wide array of people being mentioned here. Tarshish, that's in Spain. Persia is way to the east. Javan is in the north. He's a son of Japheth, was Javan, the descendant. He's a descendant of Japheth in the north. Phut and Lud, these are African peoples. Sheba is African. We have mention of various tribes of Israel. This is a huge trading network and trading empire that Tyre was. Tyre was a massive, it was a economic powerhouse of the ancient world. And that's what this is describing. Let us read verse 26. Thy rowers have brought thee into great waters. The east wind hath brought thee in the midst of the sea. Thy riches and thy fares, thy merchandise, thy mariners and thy pilots, thy caulkers and thy occupiers of thy merchandise, and all thy men of war that are in thee, and in all thy company which is in the midst of thee, shall fall into the midst of the sea in the day of thy ruin. The suburbs shall shake at the sound of the cry of thy pilots. And all that handle the oar, the mariners, and all the pilots of the sea shall come down from their ships. They shall stand upon the land, and shall cause their voice to be heard against thee, and shall cry bitterly, and shall cast up dust upon their heads. They shall wallow themselves in the ashes, and they shall make themselves utterly bald for thee, and gird them with sackcloth, and they shall weep for thee with bitterness of heart and bitter wailing. And in their wailing they shall take up a lamentation for thee, and lament over thee, saying, What city is like Tyrus, like the destroyed in the midst of the sea? When thy wares went forth out of the seas, that fillest many people, thou didst enrich the kings of the earth with the multitude of thy riches and of thy merchandise. In the time when thou shalt be broken by the seas and the depths of the waters, thy merchandise and all thy company in the midst of thee shall fall. All the inhabitants of the isle shall be astonished at thee, and their kings shall be sore afraid. They shall be troubled in their countenance. The merchants among the people shall hiss at thee. Thou shalt be a terror, and never shalt be any more. So once again we have a destruction of Tyrus. Now you'll recall, in my last video, chapter 26, we also had the destruction of Tyrus foretold. Now this chapter is a lamentation for the destruction of Tyrus, because it was the economic center of the entire ancient world in the old world. Tyrus, or the Phoenician cities, with Tyrus being, Tyre and Sidon were the two primary Phoenician cities, and they kind of traded back and forth on who was more powerful at what time. But while it was at its height, Tyrus sailed as far as the British Isles to trade. It mentions the tin. Tin, as far as I understand, is not found in the Mediterranean area. You go to England for that. They had a massive trading network. And when they fall, to a large extent, now all their subsidiaries become independent nations, but the trade network and the power of that trade is lost. And for a good while, you don't have that kind of economy anymore. And that's why we have this lamentation that they were the powerhouse of economy at the time. But they're going to be destroyed, and so we take up this lamentation. So we'll leave that here. We will pick this up in chapter 28, and then we will turn briefly to Obadiah. So we'll see you there.